Hi, this is Jennifer Wilson, and with me today is my friend Amy Vetter. Welcome to our Leadership Lunch Chat.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, so we're here in Nebraska. It's rainy. It started raining yesterday. We've had sunny and hot and beautiful for a week, and now we're going to have 3 straight days of rain. So while I'm excited about Friday, I don't think I'm going to have much in the outdoor activity arena. And I hope my electricity doesn't take any hits while we're doing this today. So happy Juneteenth. I think we should start with that. Just a holiday maybe many of us might not have been educated about when we were in school, because Black holidays weren't necessarily Black and African American holidays, and major monuments, monumental moments were not necessarily shared in the school that I grew up in Nebraska. And since this really big sort of civil focus on justice and equality for Black and African Americans is happening this last 60 days, let's say, so much more has come to light about the role of important events and important, wonderful inventors and great historical figures in the Black community that we're now just starting to hear about. And Juneteenth has been celebrated for a while and talked about, but I think most people are getting hip to it this time around. What do you think?
Oh, I agree. And I also think, now I've, had a number of people tell me that their workplaces took the day off in observance of it as well. And awesome. I think it goes with all the stuff that we have to think about when we're coming back into the workplace. Diversity and inclusion is as big of a topic as it's ever been right now, even with all the COVID stuff we have to think about and technology, but this is the human side, right? And so I think it's really important that we don't ignore holidays that might not be familiar to us, or celebrations that aren't familiar to us, whatever that may be, whether it's Pride Week as well. And, so it's important that I think we acknowledge all humans as one, and that when we're rethinking of how our workplaces are going to come together, how we're going to incorporate this into it as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been super encouraged this last week talking to firm leaders who are planning not just event-based, but ongoing education in their organization about diversity and inclusion, real, not check the box type programs, but real intention to learn about the differences. And I think that that's, anytime you have a diverse team, you're going to have a better team, because you're going to have all perspectives considered and all sorts of innovative techniques applied. And so that diversity is we all would know that and say, oh yes, a diverse team is better. But part of diversity and having a diverse team work together well is understanding the differences. And you can't understand them unless you listen and study and research and read. And I didn't know what Juneteenth was about, and I'm not going to tell you that I'm a historian that can tell you what it is exactly now, but the declaration of the end of slavery in Texas happened on this day. Please God, let us never enslave any group ever again in this country, and let us end this oppression and injustice and inequity that our Black and African American friends feel. And I just am happy to celebrate this day. I would celebrate it before the events of this year if I had known really and understood what it was about. But my ignorance is on me, not on anyone else. And I've got to go out there and ask questions and learn. And I've been doing that. I think you've been doing that too. And it's taken us on a real journey. And I just wish I was on the journey sooner. And I've had people from my high school who have taken my open invitation to share with me that I want to learn more. And they'll send me a long email and say, let me tell you what it was like growing up in Bellevue, Nebraska. as an African American, in the 70s and 80s. Let me tell you a few of my experiences, and I've just been so grateful to have people be so open and willing to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having open discussion about it, I was on a meeting with a group yesterday of just even all of our confusion on what the right terms, because I heard you say African American, and the woman on the group said, no, you should be saying Black. And so that was new to me, because I thought, that was more offensive than African American. So I think it's important that we have those open conversations and not assume.
Yeah.
Because, it's not one of those things that, and I think in our workplaces, we have to be really careful to have the best approach to just open conversation. There was I went to a mindfulness conference once, and I think the website is called All Sides. But the hope is that people come together from all different viewpoints, maybe political viewpoints, whatever that is, and facilitate conversation in a way that's very open to each person's opinion, not trying to push your agenda forward, but actually listening. And that is a communication skill anyways, as an advisor, that's really important to have as far as questioning and active listening. And there's no better time to be practicing that skill.
No doubt.
It's not about us, interjecting our own story. It's about, completely open listening and diving deeper and being okay to ask the question, should I say African American? Should I say Black? What is, and not being scared to do it, that the conversation is important.
Right. And I've been following the lead, and I think that we're going to find diverse viewpoints on that. I've been following the lead of Kimberly Ellis Taylor, as in her writing, has been saying Black and African Americans. But people listening to us today, if you have a different viewpoint and we're not, addressing this correctly, we want to know. I mean, I want to know. That's the thing is that I don't want to offend anybody, but I definitely don't want to be silent because I'm afraid I'm going to offend people. Right. I can accept the coaching. I want the coaching, and I want to get better, and I want to represent better. I think that one of the things I've been talking about with some of the leaders that are planning to get kind of deep into this diversity and inclusion discussion, and in particular around Black Lives Matter and elevating Black and African Americans in the workplace, and understanding them and really embracing their needs and wants. One of the things that I've been trying to say to those firm leaders is, hey, you'll have to be so vulnerable. If you're going to go to an unconscious bias conference or have that kind of a program come into your office and sit, with your peers and discuss your biases, that's a really stripped down, kind of naked, vulnerable conversation. And if it's not, then you're not going to get anywhere. Right. And one of the hard parts of, you and I've talked a lot about selfish interest, and one of our selfish interests is to look good. We want to be held in high esteem and to look good and to look smart and look capable, and we don't want to look dumb. We don't want to admit fault. It's just a natural tendency of humans to protect looking good. But if you're going to have an unconscious bias discussion, you have to, strip down and confess the stuff that you believe or believed. Old beliefs that you've held, or old unconscious things that are in your minds. You have to face them, and then not just face them in a room listening, but share them. Part of what you have to do to help you manage bias is to share bias. I do that a lot when I'm trying to help firms. I'll say I have and this is not related to culture, but I have a terrific bias about remote work, a massive bias. I believe remote work works, and I believed in it way before COVID-19. anytime somebody tries to say three-dimensional in person is the only way to do something.
Yeah.
For me, it's like I can't control my face. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'll be like, I'm like, I have a massive bias about it, and I tell people that because I want them to call me on it if it's disrupting what we're trying to get done.
Yeah.
But that's a simple bias I could toss out. A safe bias. But anyway, that vulnerability is required now. I mean, we really need to get in there and bring our whole selves to work and embrace each other's whole selves.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two things. One is it's not even just with our peers, it's with the people that work for us as well. And it's being vulnerable in front of your staff so that they know that you're human as well. And sometimes that can be really hard to do, but it's important to create that bond, to reduce that barrier of communication, to improve the culture, and also to understand if there's certain things that you're doing or saying that can be offensive when you're not intending, to be that way. We did get a comment from Scott about
that too.
Sports. And I don't know enough about the sports, arena. I mean, I know, so this would be, and I will just use an example. I think it's all in our perspective, whether diversity and inclusion is happening in a sport. I've brought up before my religion and having to hide it a lot of times. Well, I can tell you my kids are very elite runners, and we've had to deal with a lot of religion being pushed forth in public school sports, and have to keep our mouth shut for the greater goal of winning and the sport itself. But the mental space that my kids have had to overcome to not, to take themselves out of a conversation, and not feel excluded when they're going to Bible study groups as athletes or Bible study camp as athletes, where they're not a part of that. Those are the little things that happen that maybe other people don't notice because it's not in their experience, right? And there's nothing wrong with what the sport is doing because they believe that is helping glue the kids together. But for anyone that's not in that belief system, it's very exclusive. And, it's something we have to talk a lot about as a family, to just help, keep that mental mindset so that they can still achieve the goals that they want to do. And so I think there's little things that happen that when we are not something else, we're like, oh, I didn't even realize that was an issue, or I didn't realize we said something. So when we talk about open communication, it's really allowing open communication, truly what is people's experience, and not getting offended, and hearing that experience and making changes, not just hearing it.
Right.
Hearing it and taking action of what could we do different so that even if it's one person, they don't feel excluded. Yeah.
Well, first, I'm sorry that that's happening, and I'm sorry that you feel like you have to hide it. And I understand that there's always that fear of retribution. I go to the coach and say, could we please take Christianity out of here? And, if you want to talk about a higher power or something, maybe we could get there. But, you're bringing a specific type of religion to this sport, and that doesn't feel fair to us. The fear is then they won't treat your kid right. Or whatever.
Exactly. So that's why we keep our mouth shut.
I know, but that's what the system. I mean, I get you totally, and so I'm not making you wrong for that.
Yeah.
If my kid asked me to be quiet, I would be quiet.
Yeah.
I am that mom that my kids have to ask to be quiet.
I am too.
Yeah. So if they did, I probably would honor it unless I thought it was just absolutely horrible. But
right.
Scott's point is that in things like sports and certain sports, like maybe my husband played football, they bond together as a brotherhood in that kind of a sport, let's say, and they aren't as concerned about color of skin or ethnic background or religious background. It's a little bit like, let's go out and stop these guys, or let's move the ball down, and their objective causes them to kind of become blind to the differences. What are the similarities and how can we play our part? And I just wish that we could do a lot more of that in business, but I don't think you can be blind, like ignore. We've got to talk about the differences and then try to figure out how are we going to make them play to the strengths of those differences or whatever. One thought I had that I wanted to make sure to say today is that I've had a number of firm leaders that are like, listen, we put out a few messages internally. I did a video. I'm asking people to come educate me about their experience as a person of color or as a Black or African American. No one's coming to me to talk to me. And I'm like, well, guess what? No one's probably gonna.
You have to pick up the phone.
Not because they don't want to, but because they might not want to be the squeaky wheel. They might not want to be that guy that comes forward or gal and says, hey, these are my experiences. When they're not always coming in to share positive experiences, they're afraid of that retribution. They're afraid of being a squeaky wheel or a whiner or whatever. And so, if you want to learn more about the experiences of your Black, African American, and people of color in your firm, you have to reach to them one at a time, not en masse, and not put out a blanket, hey, come see me. You have to say, hey, Susan, I would really like to schedule some time. I'd like to understand more what your experience is working at our firm. Good and bad, not just related to being Black and African, or African American, not just related to that, all your experiences, but I especially want you to tell me your experiences related to differences that you experience in our workplace because of your ethnic background. I want to understand your culture. I want to understand how we're not embracing it. Where are we making it hard? Because we're going to make changes. And then to hold that meeting and, like you said, listen and not interject and not try to solve even in those meetings. Right. Not say, well, here's our plan. Here's our 4-step plan.
And did you know we have this and this and this?
Yeah. Well, I mein, I think a lot of firms get you there. Like, did you read the handbook? That.
And then you get changed.
A lot of firms are planning a lot right now. So there could be like this desire to be like, let me tell you all the stuff we're planning. And I don't even think you do that in that meeting. I think you can say, let's have another meeting where it'll be my turn to run ideas by you that I think might work for you to tell me whether you think we should do them or not. Right. And that's a feedback meeting, and that's a totally different thing than tell me about you and let me hear your story and let me really understand your experience. Yeah, so I'm encouraging firm leaders to reach. I think that's so critical.
Well, and I think it's an important point you just said. I don't want to pass it up of listen. And then when you come up with a plan, come back to those people and say, does this address it? Not just come out with the plan. Like there's a 3-prong approach, right? Like it's listening, it's feedback on what you think the actions are and how people will synthesize those actions, and then come out with what you're going to say to everyone. You need to get feedback on that to make sure that what you're creating for everyone is going to actually solve the problem. Because if it doesn't, it actually creates more unrest and chatter and people not thinking it's authentic. Because you want people to support it once you're out and go, yeah, they came back to me and I do agree with this, and that they're saying they agree with it themselves.
Yeah, that'll generate buy-in, but also hopefully they'll feel comfortable enough to be honest if they don't think it's the right solution, to help tailor it or put the kibosh on it so it doesn't happen. The other thing is that I just was thinking about, like, if you're a big firm CEO and you call me to the office and we really don't know each other and you want me to tell you like my experience, good and bad, I might be too afraid to do that. That might feel just way risky or something. And so survey, please survey. Please survey also. I'm not saying don't reach. I do want you to reach.
It's just whichever communication style people are going to be more comfortable with communication.
Allow for surveying, which is, like a safer feeling. And then invite one by one people to talk if they want to. Say, I want to schedule an hour with you, but I'm not demanding this hour. I think it has to feel really safe and comfortable, and we need to get on the same plane, because if it feels like I'm going into the Wizard of Oz's, chamber or something to have this conversation, that's not going to get us as firm leaders the kind of information we really want, the truth.
For sure. Yeah. So really, I think, as we wrap up today, one of the important things is that the discussion's even happening.
Yes.
That there's really good thinking around this and actions being taken, because, the most important thing is this isn't a fly-by-night discussion again, that, there's true action and thought and a realistic look at your management team, your partner team, your corporate team, whatever it is, of truly how diverse are you and what are the actions that you're going to take over the next year, 2 years, 3 years. And I know it's a lot with everything else going on in the world right now, but the world is changing.
Yes.
And things are going to look a lot different than they've ever looked before, which is a good thing as well. So whether that's technology, whether it's diversity and inclusion, whether it's our remote workspaces, these are things to embrace. And it's a great time for us all that we're having these discussions.
I agree. And I think that firm leaders run a tremendous risk of being silent here, and not wanting to address this. I think that they, that's a tone deaf kind of a response. None of us has wanted to be tone deaf to health and safety with COVID. We better not be tone deaf here with this wonderful opportunity to open up this dialogue and make real change for D&I, for diversity and inclusion, and really embrace all these wonderful, talented people in our community that deserve to be known and understood and embraced and included. So I think that's a great way for us to end today. I really appreciate all those guys and gals who have tuned in. We're grateful, Amy and I. And Scott, thank you for being our mentor here in StreamYard. We're so happy you made us feel less alone. So thank you. And if you like this, share this in social media, please. We'd love to have more people hear this message, and that might be the way that you tell your firm leaders some of these things if you don't want to say them yourself. So anyway, thanks everybody, and we'll be here next Friday.
Thank you.
See ya.